I'm coming up to my almost 1 year anniversary of living here in Richmond, BC. And one of the things I wonder about on the West Coast is the big, gigantic trees. Anytime I go hiking, and I really appreciate hiking in this area, I mean, the trees are something I wonder. I mean, of course, when I get to the summit of the mountain, and I can see water and the snow on the mountains and the mountains themselves and all the trees from a higher view. I mean, I also wonder at that. There's lots of things that we can wonder at, and we ought to wonder that God, it continuously gives us grace, and as we're given grace, we pass that grace on to others. What I mean by that is, if somebody compliments me, I hold that compliment in my heart, I cherish it, but then I have to give it away. And likely I will give it away because it's inside of me, and it will come out at some point in time. And it'll likely come out at the right moment in time, you know, when somebody else needs to receive that compliment. How important it is we build each other up. In that first reading from the Book of Kings, we got to wonder at this woman's insight. Like she picks up that Elisha is a man of God, that he is holy, that he's working in the prophetic ministry, and she wants to contribute to this. First by feeding him, and then she even builds a place for him. Of course, we can be overwhelmed that, well, I mean, I can't do all that for other people. But in the gospel reading, it says, simply give a cup of water. And I strongly believe that most of the people in the world can give a cup of water. Most people in the world are actually wanting to give that cup of water, wanting to make the world a better place, wanting to share goodness, wanting the world to be a place of beauty, good, and goodness. I believe that in our hearts. But of course, we can't be overwhelmed by a handful of people that make life miserable for others. We have to stay firm that God's presence is with us. God is giving us grace constantly. And even those who don't practice their faith, I mean, I witnessed that recently, that even God is giving them grace to pass on to others. Even they are doing amazing things because of God's presence. God actively at work in their minds, in their hearts, and in their words and actions. We ought to awe and wonder at that. And of course, going back to the trees, when St. Francis looked at a tree, he didn't just say, hello, tree. After his conversion, after he's immersed himself in the death of Christ, immersed himself, as that second reading says, immersed into that death of Christ, immersed into love and mercy, immersed into that. Like we are immersed. Do we wonder at that we have been blessed. We've been, wow, on wonder. I'm at a loss of even what to say because I'm so on wonder. So Francis, as he sees the tree, he sees the cross of Christ, but also more specifically, he was reminded of the crucified Christ. But of course, when you walk through a forest, especially on the West Coast, there's lots of trees that are lying down, they have died, but there's new trees coming out of them. There's new life. There's constantly new life. And really, when we die to self, we can build each other up. So, one of the ways that we can build, a room for someone else is simply to build them up with a compliment or build them up with a word of encouragement. We can be the voice of God for others. And I truly believe when people are encouraging us, that is God. And whoever welcomes a prophet will receive the reward. And this is what's happening in the first reading. The woman is going to receive a reward. But notice that the prophet Elisha is not aware, even though he's a prophet, he's not aware of what she actually needs. It's the servant that is aware. It really is a reminder that even in our ministry, we need other people. We never work in isolation. Even when we're working in isolation, we are doing something for the common good of the ministry. And we rely on other people, and they also rely on us. And so the servant says, well, the husband's getting older, he's likely going to pass away, and the woman's going to be alone. And I recently heard a talk that the root of all poverty is loneliness, because People don't become homeless from a lack of money. They become homeless because of a lack of relationship. Because as long as you have relationships, you can always ask for people to support you and encourage you. And so, how important it is that we reach out to others, especially those who may be alone. But so the servant is aware that this woman has no child. And so the prophet comes and announces this great announcement about this gift from God. And she knows that this is a gift from God, and do we see our own lives as gifts from God? Do we look at other people as gifts from God? In the World Cup, obviously everybody's cheering for somebody else, but regardless of who you're cheering for, everyone is a gift from God. And so as we come to Eucharist, we come again to awe and wonder at the simplicity of our God. Human beings sometimes make life complicated, and yet God is very simple. God comes to us in a simple way to remind us that I am truly with you. God wants to immerse God into us, and what a blessing that is. And so as we receive the fullness of love, the fullness of mercy, we cannot help but share this with others to make the world a better place.